Parenthood trenches. I mean, I never saw anybody breastfeed in my family.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby, a podcast dedicated to exploring the personal and emotional journeys of parenting. I'm your host. My name is Medea. Today I have Robin, lifestyle content creator and mother of two. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. So, we're going to start with the Fast Five, where I ask you five questions back to back, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your head.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Biggest pregnancy craving?
Sweets.
Sweets.
Just
Any type of
anything
sweets?
sweet. Yes, any type of sweets like donuts, French toast. I was making all kinds of baking, like all kinds of stuff.
Ooh, French toast sounds so good.
I mean, and you could put so much stuff on French toast. I was getting wild.
Hmm. All right. Which is worse? You run out of diapers or you run out of wipes?
Ooh, diapers for sure. You can get creative with what you can use for wipes. I mean, people didn't always have wipes. So you can get real. I've
True.
had to get real creative when I've been in the trenches before.
All right, I like that. One word to describe labor and one word to describe parenthood.
Labor. Why? Um, ouch.
Mm,
For labor is definitely like ouch for sure. And then what was the
right?
other one?
One word to describe parenthood.
Parenthood, trenches.
Trenches. All right.
Yes, trenches for sure.
Okay, favorite baby product you can't live without.
Ooh, favorite baby product that I can't live without. For me, it was the Baby Brezza food processor. So it steams, blends, and purees the food all in one round. And so you put whatever you want in there and it'll steam it and then it'll blend it up. And so I was able to make for my son and for my daughter tons of pops, and I get to make all of their organic food. And I never had to buy a baby food because of that one product. It saved my life.
Whoa. So it does all of that
Yes.
in one
It does
product.
all of it in one. So if you want to just steam it, you can just steam them. But also, if you want to take it that far and you press another button, it'll steam. And then when it's done steaming, it'll just puree the whole thing and make it smooth, which is just such a great. I mean, it's definitely different in a blender because you're not going to steam the food like that. And so for
Yeah.
baby food, it's such a game changer. I made all the different baby
Whoa.
foods for my son. I never had to go buy anything. I never trusted anything. And so I just felt so much better, and it was so easy and it was more affordable to be able to do that.
Whoa. I like that.
Yes. Yes.
Last one, most unexpected joy of motherhood.
The most unexpected joy is seeing your kids shadow the love that you've put into them. So I think that when they're little, you're just loving them so much and you're trying to soak in those moments and you're hanging on. But when they get to like the 4 and 5 and 6 and they start expressing themselves and they start saying the things that you've said to them. And, my son is 4 and now it's every day. He's like, Mommy, I love you so much. If I make eye contact with him, he's like, I love you, Mama. You're the best mama. And that kind of stuff is just like, what gets you through the hard days. So
Yeah,
I
they're
love that.
reflecting what they see growing up. They see all that
Yes.
love, so they're now expressing it on their own.
Yes, it makes you feel like you're doing something right as a mom because you don't always get that feedback. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute.
yeah.
What were some of, so now just getting into questions.
Of course.
What were some of the most memorable moments during your pregnancy?
Um, well, I had just a little background on that. I had my daughter very easily, Brooklyn, who's 9, and after I had her, I experienced two miscarriages and a lot of secondary infertility, which is just you're fine having your first baby, but then for whatever reason, the second time that you try to have a baby, you have a really hard time conceiving. And so with Levi, when I had him and we finally got to those milestones, being able to see him on like the 40 ultrasound and just kind of getting to go to those last appointments and knowing that he was like okay.
Mhm.
You take a lot of things for granted when you have normal, healthy pregnancies. And you realize really quickly when things don't go as smoothly. You learn to really be grateful for the little moments, the kicking and the heartbeat, and just knowing that you're like, I'll be sick as long as I get a baby at the end of this.
Mhm.
So your perspective really changes on that when you've had some loss, I think.
Yeah, well, first, I'm very sorry that happened.
Of course. Thank you.
And yeah, a baby is a miracle at the end of the day. So yeah, a lot of people take it for granted having one after the other, but it's a very, very hard process.
Yes, some women, I mean, I started to think like, will I ever have more babies? And I was so happy to have Brooklyn. But my whole life I've always wanted to be a mom of more children than that. And my first miscarriage was just like very traumatizing. And then my second one was more, you start to think that maybe you're not going to have more
Mhm.
kids. So pregnancy after that is very nerve-wracking. You're nervous the whole entire time. You're like,
Mhm.
is the baby still, is there still a heartbeat? Is he okay? But on the other end of that, the joys, like the gender reveals and all of the things that you did the first time, there's so much, not more special because your first one is still special, but it weighs differently on you.
Yeah. What did you do for your gender reveal?
For my gender reveal for Levi, we just did like a little balloon pop.
Okay.
And I honestly had a little bit of gender disappointment, which was so crazy because he was a rainbow baby and you'd think that you wouldn't. But I also had this weird idea in my head because I don't have sisters. I wanted to have like a lot of girls. And having Brooklyn, I felt like I won the lottery. I was like, oh my gosh, I get my girl. So I kind of thought maybe I would have two girls or three girls or whatever. And so I did have a little bit of gender disappointment when I found out he was a boy. And now I couldn't be happier that I have one of each. But I also like to talk about that because I think that it's really normal to have.
Hmm.
And I think that even after people will be like, well, weren't you just happy to have a baby? Yes, of course I was. But I also did experience gender disappointment, even with him being a rainbow baby. So,
It's very
but I got
normal
over that
because
fast. It was just like the gender reveal in a couple of days. But once you start buying clothes and picking names and, you're like, it's whatever.
yeah, some people don't even want to know the gender until the day of, which I think is
Yes.
crazy.
I think that that's so special, but I could never. I would have to, the second that I find out I'm pregnant, I'm like, I wonder what it is.
Yeah,
You're like,
same, same. I would need
but I
to
think that that would
know.
be like the biggest, coolest challenge. Like, I would feel so accomplished if I did that. And what a cool story to be able to tell your child that we did not know what you were. Like,
Hmm.
I think that's pretty cool.
It's cool. It has its pros, has its cons. So I understand both takes on it.
Yes.
But did you receive any advice from friends, family, healthcare providers that stuck with you?
Um, I received a ton of advice with Brooklyn, and I asked for a lot of advice with Brooklyn because she was my first child. And with Levi, he was a COVID baby, and I had him during the pandemic. So that was a very different pregnancy because I went to all of my appointments by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared that I was going to have to deliver by myself. And so I leaned into preparing myself in case I was going to have the baby alone. So what that looked like for me was coming up with a birth plan, which I did not do with Brooklyn. With Brooklyn, all I knew was that I wanted to get an epidural and wanted a safe baby. With
Hmm.
Levi, I wanted to make sure that we were both protected and that there was no kind of questions about what my intentions were and what I wanted because I knew I wasn't gonna, there was a potential that I would be in the room alone.
Hmm.
And so I found somebody called the birth doula online, and she kind of helps women of, she's more for women of color, but it's for everybody. But her intention is to help women of color who sometimes have a harder time in the medical when they're getting medical attention, speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves. And so I wrote a birth plan. It was very like strategic and it had all the points on there about what I wanted, what I didn't want to happen with the baby afterwards. And I'm not like a crazy person, so I didn't have a lot of things on there, but I just wanted to know that my voice was being heard and that it was on paper and that whoever was going to be delivering my baby saw that. And I think for me, that allowed me to go in and feel very calm and relaxed, even though it was still very painful and stressful. And I think that all women should look into that if they're having a baby, just so that they know you're able to speak for yourself because sometimes labor goes crazy, right? Sometimes the
Yeah.
pain is too much, or sometimes things happen that are out of our control. And so it is kind of like the one thing that we can control is our intention before we go in there. So
Yeah.
that was what I did.
Did everything go according to plan?
It actually did not.
Oh, it did
Um,
not.
which is so interesting. It did not. Levi, I did not want any kind of induction. And I actually was pressured to get Pitocin with Levi because I was laboring for so long. And so they gave me Pitocin. And what ended up happening with the Pitocin is that he came out so fast that he came out fully bruised all over his
Oh,
face and all over like his shoulders. And I hemorrhaged incredibly badly, which was super scary. But I feel like the doctors listened to me in the moments, and I had to kind of listen to them too. And I think that there's things that you don't want to happen, but when it comes down to like making sure that the baby comes out and making sure the mama's okay, sometimes you're like, okay, it's not going to go to plan all the time. So,
yeah, because it's a snap decision.
yes. And you don't know what that baby's going to, I mean, it's what you want, right? But the baby wants to do what they want to do. So he
Mhm.
was doing his own thing.
Wow. So Pitocin, what is that?
So, Pitocin is a drug that women are given to speed up the labor process. And
Okay.
so it makes your labor more intense. It'll speed up your contractions. So, my contractions weren't coming fast enough and they weren't steady enough, but my water had broken already, and we were already like a day and a half into labor. So they gave me the Pitocin, and baby, I took a nap and I woke up and they were like, it's time to push. And I was like, can I get the crust out of there? Like, no, 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 it's time to push. And I was like,
So give me a
okay.
minute. No.
Right. So it was lights, camera, action, and it went from 0 to 100 real quick. And so I think that people are against it because it can raise the baby's blood pressure. And it can be more painful because it's more intense. For me, I had an epidural and I honestly didn't even know. Like I said, I took a nap and I woke up and they were like, it's time to go. But it was
Wow.
just the speed at which he moved down the birth canal, which is why he was so bruised up and like crazy. He looked like beat up when he came out.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I
So
know. It's traumatic for them when they come out that fast. So,
yeah. Pros and cons again. Pro is
yes.
got it out of the way, but con, yeah,
Like,
that really stings.
wow. We all, and in the moment you feel very like sad about it or like, oh my gosh. But then again, now he's totally fine, right? But you look back, I was just looking at his baby photos when he was first born, and I was like, I remember I sent the picture to my mom and she was like, is everything okay? And I didn't even realize that he had looked that his whole, he was a completely different shade because he was fully
Mhm.
bruised. So it's
Oh,
crazy what the
wow.
body goes through and what they go through to get here.
Yeah, at least he doesn't remember it.
No, I don't. I mean, I'll remember it, but I'll show him pictures when he gives me a hard time
Mhm.
when he's older.
Was there any advice you received that turned out to be totally wrong?
Um, I think that I just went against all of the old school. Like, I had a lot of people pressuring me to feed my kids early and introduce solids earlier than I wanted to, and put like cereal in the bottle. And nobody in my family breastfed. And so I had no advice on breastfeeding. And I think the majority of my family, they weren't against it, but they kind of tried to advise me on it would be easier to bottle feed. And I was on my own. I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. I know that I wanted to try. But it was so easy for me with both of my kids that it ended up being, I breastfed both of my kids until they were 3, which ended up being totally different than what I ever saw in my family. I never saw anybody breastfeed in my family. My mom never breastfed. She thought that it was like not weird, but she had a weird mindset around it. And so I think that that was one of the things that I felt very proud of myself for doing, that a lot of my family was like, "Oh, you don't need to do that. It's not that important." Um, and then what's some other advice that I think was wrong? Um, I don't know. I'll have to think about that one.
So you had no issues breastfeeding.
I had just stopping, honestly.
Oh,
So the
oh, stopping like
yeah, like
once.
weaning. Both
Oh,
of my
okay.
kids were so attached and they were both like they did not want to stop, either one of them. I had to take a trip for one kid to literally like get out of the same vicinity. And with my daughter, it was a little bit easier, but both of them were like it was, and I felt really proud of myself for it, but I think that also if you have an easy time breastfeeding, it is very easy. You're not making bottles, you're not cleaning bottles. So you kind of can lean into, I think the kid and the mom can sometimes become complacent with it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think some of the things that I like to share about breastfeeding that are kind of the negative is that my son did develop bottle rot on his teeth from breastfeeding, and my daughter
Oh.
did not. And I did not. I had to learn all about that education as a mom and go through a lot of mom guilt with that. But my son started having like decay on his front teeth, and I took him into the dentist not knowing like where it was coming from. And they told me that it was from breastfeeding and co-sleeping with him in the bed. And at night when he was breastfeeding and not brushing his teeth in between those smaller moments, that he was actually the sugar was decaying, and it was literally the same thing as bottle rot, which I had never even known that breastfeeding kids could get bottle rot. And she was like, there's not a lot of talk about it. And my son, like, yeah, it's been a battle that we've had to like still fight with. And so I always try to tell moms that it's not coming from a judgy way, because I would never judge any kind of mom, but I wish that I would have known that that is potentially an issue, because my daughter, we did the same thing and had no problems. So they just say, kids have different teeth and different enamel, but it is definitely something that happens that I had no idea happens at all.
So the solution to it is brushing teeth in between sessions.
Yes. And I think when you co-sleep sometimes, they can be nursing throughout the night. And so even as soon as they
Oh,
have teeth, if they're nursing at night, like you have to brush their teeth afterwards. Which could be like common sense to some people, but for me, Levi wasn't even having solids and was nursing and had the little chompers. So
yeah, I
I
wouldn't
had no
think
idea.
to. And especially because
Right.
you had your daughter and you didn't have to do that. So you're not going to think to do that for your
Right.
second
She never
child.
had one issue. So it was
Wow.
crazy.
That's a
Yeah.
good tip.
Yes.
Final question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to mothers listening right now?
I would say take care of yourself. Listen to yourself and take care of yourself. This is the most beautiful time of your life. Um, and the experience is only that much more enjoyable if you are able to actually enjoy it and your mental health is taken care of and you feel supported in whatever way that looks to you. You're going to give so much of yourself for the next time on. And so just really make sure that you also prepare yourself like you're preparing for this baby, that you're also preparing to put that much love into yourself as well, because your babies
Mhm.
can only thrive as much, as mama thrives. So that would be my tip.
Yeah, having a child takes so much out of you. You forget to take care of yourself.
Yes.
And then the experience might not be as fun if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right.
So I
Postpartum is
agree with
so
that.
real. So,
Hmm. I love that. Well, that's all we have for today. Robin, thank you for coming on.
oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun.
Of course. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
You've been listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby. If you're in the market for a new crib, glider, dresser, or more, we'd love for you to check out our line of furniture. Head over to oxfordbabyandkids.com or sohobaby.com. All links are within the show notes. For more information as a listener, enter the code podcast10 for 10% off your total purchase, plus free shipping on all orders over $799. Thanks for listening and tune into our next episode. Bye for now, and remember, every step is a step towards progress. We hope today's story gives you the confidence and the assurance that every journey is different, but we do it together.